Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we explore real parenting experiences, expert guidance, and empowering strategies that help you parent with confidence. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, mom of 7, former teacher, and your companion on the wild, wonderful journey of raising kids. Today's guest brings a rare blend of lived experience, professional expertise, and real-world urgency. Kriya Lendzion is an addictions counselor, prevention specialist, parent and teen coach, speaker, and curriculum creator who has spent decades helping families navigate some of the toughest issues parents face: substance use, risky behavior, and the very real challenges that show up when screens, social pressure, and mental health all collide. Kriya's story is powerful because she's not just teaching theory, she's lived it, recovered from it, and built her life's work around helping families prevent the kind of spirals that often start small and then suddenly feel overwhelming. Kriya, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure and honor.
Yes, no, thank you so much. I know, like, I'm a little bit of a bubbly personality, and so we're talking about some heavy topics here today. But also it really comes down to some of those conversations that we often are too scared to have as parents.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is really just kind of the place, like, we're going to have a safe space during our conversation to discuss for parents that are listening in. I'm not sure if we need a trigger warning for some of these things that might come up. So I just want to have that disclaimer of like what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
hmm
That it is some big things, but it's also things that a lot of families are navigating, and we feel like we need to have some open and transparent conversations. Of all people, Kriya is very wellly credible, I guess, in this field, and so we want to make sure that we bring you the very best. So Kriya, truly thank you for being here. You shared that your journey started when you were a teen, trying to feel a little less anxious and more comfortable in your own skin. So this really kind of
Yeah.
started with your personal experience. Can you walk us through what that season was like for you?
Yeah. Well, I think I never really felt like I fit in. And that's a much longer story. But the short version is I never quite, felt like I fit in. And so I was really reaching for ways to feel comfortable in my skin, to feel like I belonged and I was, connected to other people, looking for soothing, looking for a sense of control. And so I was just I reached for whatever was around me that would kinda shortcut me to those feelings, and I got the idea that alcohol was one of those shortcuts. There was nothing negative, it was in the house, it was in lots of the houses, it was in the billboards and the commercials and, the movies and TV, and everybody seemed to be like that seemed to bring them the things that I was wanting. The happiness and the comfort and the popularity and all those things, and so it really started with me dabbling in alcohol and also using food, I think, to do some of that 'cause again, another thing that was easily accessible, and it just felt good and was kinda distracting and comforting when I consumed it, right? Like a lot of us feel, but for me, when I surgically had those holes, it was really, filling that for me. So fast forward, and it became something that increasingly became out of balance for me, and I think it really started to create bigger holes instead of filling them, that I then had to kinda amp up the extent that I was trying to pack the growing holes with as I went into teen years, and then stepped into college where it all really went off the rails.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that then too, because that's a different shift, right? Like there's some things that are happening at home, like for parents that are listening in, right? Like,
Yeah.
so there's things that are happening at home that you might be able to witness for your child. And then as you go off to college, you said the guardrails kind of disappeared and things got
Mhm.
kind of crazy. So walk us through like what happened then.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was I'd already started having some consequences, and then it was that but by the time I hit college, it was really, okay, well, now I'm creating some of the crap show that I'm then, like, trying to escape with these behaviors to feel better and not feel or think about it, and now I'm creating more, and so it was really spiraling and spiraling, and stepping onto a college campus, it was just free flowing addictive opportunities. It was free flowing booze and drugs and food and guys and everything that I used to addictively was there with no one. telling me what to do or when or checking in with or, with me. It was just all on my own. And so without any of that, anything around me that was protective, any kind of force field, any kind of guidance, I had no inner compass of my own, at that point. Um, no sense of like what's healthy or unhealthy or a good or bad idea. It's like if it gave me attention and it felt good and it made me feel better, about myself, then it was good. It's not that I really had a good heart, but that was kind of my value system, and so, yeah, so it just looked like me really tanking, in a lot of ways in terms of the blend of like mental health and physical health and my academic well-being, everything was really was spiraling down. And I hit a point that, I mean, the short version is that I had a blackout, basically like like a 24-hour almost blackout, where I had excessively drank and really was just aware of um blurry, but all of it was like, oh, this is not me. So I kind of came to the screeching awareness of like, yeah, this is not who I believe in being and what I want for myself. And so I'm going to need to grab, grab some life preservers that people had been trying to throw at me. And actually accept the help and see what I can do to become who I believe in being.
Yeah. So that was that moment, that internal sort of awareness that happened, and then the flip
Yeah.
switch. Like, so then what was it like when you were going through that process as a college student? Because that also seems like that would come with its own set of challenges.
Yeah, it was not statistically, there was a snowball's chance in hell of my like, of my succeeding at getting and staying sober. And I was 19 in the middle of, one of the top party schools in the country, uh, in the middle of the Greek system. I was a sorority girl hanging out with all the frats, and there's all this culture around that. And, and there was now they have really rich, recovery community and colleges and support networks and sober dorms. And, it's a lot more popular it's trending to be sober now, believe it or not, but not then. So it was, luckily I relied on the counseling center a lot. I had amazing friends who I had been crapping on for a long time, but that were still worried about me and knew that I was good underneath all this behavior, and really supported me through that. And then it was like I don't know, it kind of flipped into a positive peer pressure kind of situation. So I realized that all this stuff that I had been like searching for through this destructive stuff, that when I started to counsel peers, because the counseling center started using me for peer counseling, and I started to speak to the freshmen when they were coming in, and I started to do training for the staff on how to spot and help a student, that might be going through trouble. And I'm like, ding, 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 like, wait a minute, like this is needed. And then kids need to have what I didn't, and know things and have skills that I didn't have. And oh my gosh, my parents and my teachers through all of this, they tried to do the best that they knew how to do, but it wasn't really effective, and it backfired sometimes. Like, they all need all this. Like, this is what I can be and do and it felt right. And I saw that it was needed, and I saw that it was impactful. And to start getting like the belonging and the acceptance and the positive attention, for this sort of new identity that I stepped into, was it just, was all felt all divine, to me.
Incredible. And like
Yeah.
what an inspirational story too, for like families that
Thanks.
might be seeing that their child is going through some of these, or maybe they've even experienced it themselves and they're like, I had no
Mhm.
idea, right? Like we as parents, we're not always equipped for what's right ahead of us, or
Mm-mm.
even know or can anticipate what's going to happen a few years down the
Yeah.
line. So how has your lived experience and changed or shaped the way that you've worked with teens and parents differently than maybe someone who has learned it academically?
Yeah. Because I think the expertise, comes from a lot of different directions, and it keeps building on itself, right? I mean, it started with my own experience, and then I so I started, that my college started paying me to do some of the work that I was doing. I started running the programming on campus. And then so then I'm like, oh, I can go to school for this. I can get certified and licenses. And, so that came, the life experience came first. And then I started backing it up with the classroom learning and the letters after my name and the licensures and stuff. And then I was a parent. And then, I'm like, oh, now I get to practice some of this. And I
No.
and there's my poor kid, the trial and error on him. But and he was one of my greatest teachers on, oh, hey, this is what like works and what isn't. And then I had a couple bonus kids and as my stepchildren, and we had some bumps along the road. And I'm like, okay, here's some more nuggets of that I get to bring to what I'm doing and being an educator and working in schools and seeing, what's sort of unique to that setting. And I know that we share that in common so I get to bring that to schools and say, hey, I get it. I get that we're all overwhelmed. I get that our plates are all full. I get we care about these kids, but we're trying to partner with parents and we're not always, in agreement on campus, all that. So it's like I get all of that from all of those different angles. So I think that, what I get to bring is empathy. Like real, genuine, like, "Oh, boo, I get this." When I'm talking to a kid or a parent, like, "Oh, I understand what it feels like to be swimming upstream," with some of this stuff, or to have all of these things pushing and pulling, like, tug of war with you for influence with your own kid, in the world, like, I get it. So I think that what I hear from folks is that I don't have to, like, pull out the, "Well, let's see what it
Yeah, look
says
at
here." I'm like, "No, this just comes up from authentic, experience and wisdom more than knowledge sometimes."
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like you can definitely sense that too when you work with different providers for different things. It's like it just hits
Mhm.
different when you know that they've been through it too.
Yeah.
Um and then also the different perspectives. Like as you mentioned, you became a parent and then it was also like, okay, well now you have your journey and now it's like you're helping other parents maybe navigate the journey that they have with their children from that different lens. Um,
Yeah.
one of the things that really jumped out from our initial conversation was that you had said that people started calling you the teen whisperer. And I think
Mhm.
like any parent's ears probably just perked up that are listening in. They're like, wait,
Yeah.
what are the tips? What's going on?
Yeah.
Um, so tell us a little bit more about that. Break that
Yeah.
down for us.
And again, I think this came from I don't feel like my inner adolescent is that far away. Like if there's some pieces of like I still have it. That's another way where I think I
Yeah,
identify with
that's a
adolescence.
quirk in this industry, right?
So I
Yeah.
think about like, well, what was that like for me? But also just, having been a school counselor for 23 years, and a clinician is they get to tell me all these things about, oh, if my parents would just do this, or this is what drives me crazy. And then again, my own child sharing that with me. So, um, I think a couple things are key. One of them is that we tend to, coming from, it only comes from love. Like let me just name that, validate that first. We mean well, but we tend to, like we have our brains are fully formed. We have lots of years of experience. We can see the like the football plays, right? We can see like, oh, honey, if you do this, this is going to happen, and this is what you're doing wrong, right? So we want to like impart our kids with all of that and tell them what to do when and we have to stop. We have to not do that. And so instead of launching into the TEDx, at them with all the things we know and they should do, and is that we really need to know if we're going to guide them through this increasingly addictive world. For one, we need to know like what's going on in their inner and their outer world. We really do. But if we want to build that trust, we have to ask. We ask them. And I mean, and that just sounds like something as simple as, like, hey, what do you know about, vaping? What do you know about social media's impact on mental health? What do you know about AI chatbots? Here, sports betting, whatever. What do you know first? What are you seeing or hearing or thinking or feeling about it before we start going like, oh my gosh, this is the worst scary thing. Let me tell you what to do about all of this, right? And then we ask them for permission as part of that to like, hey, I heard this story today. I've heard this on a podcast. And I got some ideas. Like, do you mind if I share those with you? Or I went through something similar. Like, are you open to hearing that? So we ask what they know. We ask permission. It's so small and it makes a huge difference. The second thing I would say is empathizing and validating, and replacing judgment with that, or sarcasm, all the things that can come across as sarcasm, condescension. Like, we got to really check that. And what that sounds like is, well, first of all, we have to do is we have to put ourselves in their shoes, but not as us. That's what we tend to do. We have to put ourselves in their shoes as them. So imagining, what are they, for one, they're partially formed brains. How are they hearing things, right? They're overreactive to things. They see things as threats. They are looking for dopamine. And so anything that looks fun and exciting and new and thrilling, and like, that's what they gravitate towards. So we have to imagine how they're hearing things and seeing things. And then, what are they exposed to? What's the messaging that they are getting in the world around them right now, which isn't like it was when we were 14. We can't say, "Oh, I was your age, honey." We were not their age in 2026 with everything that's there that they're soaking in and the pushes and pulls they have. So once we do that, then we can say, so even when our kid is like, "Oh, everybody's vaping, it's no big deal," or whatever the thing is that we want to be like, "Are you kidding me?" and freak out, is that we go, "I can see why you would think that. I can see why you would feel that way. And everybody's got Snapchat but them. I can see why you'd be interested in that," right? So we empathize and we validate. It doesn't mean we agree. We can still say and don't put your big old butt in it, by the way, because that invalidates the first half of the sentence. So it's a little teen whispering tip, is then we can say, and again, I have a different opinion on this, or I've had some different experience, or I heard something else, or here's why that concerns me, right? So we can add that. But just remember, I think, a third main point is that when we respect their viewpoint and they feel respected by us, they're way more likely to respect ours and respect our guidance, and what we have to say. So I think that those are my three top teen whispering tips.
I mean, I feel like we could end the episode right there. Like, okay,
I know.
take one
Deep
thing
dive.
away,
Yeah.
parents. I hope you listened to the last little bit
Yeah.
from Kriya here. Rewind, listen to it again, save it in your notes.
Mhm.
My goodness. Well, those are like incredibly valuable nuggets because you break it down so simply, and it is things that we already know. Maybe we adjust the order, maybe we adjust the delivery, right? Um, and I have 7 children. So, like, I'm thinking about, okay, how does this look differently even for the same children within my household? Mind you, my children are young right now, but I'm still very cognizant of, like, hey, we're only a few years away from all of this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, any word of advice for parents that maybe have a kiddo that is maybe more shut down, or like, what
Mm,
if they're not even able to kind of
mhm.
open up or start the dialogue? Where can
Yeah.
you start?
Well, I think that, kids can't always verbalize what's going on for them, for one. Um, they can't answer why. I discourage us from ever using the word like, "Well, why did you do that? Why do you feel this way? Why is this like?" That's kids can't always answer that question, right? Um, they're overwhelmed. They can be really overwhelmed with a lot of feelings, and they might also feel judged by or afraid of talking to us, hesitant because maybe we'll be disappointed. Um, Maybe they see us as hypocritical. Maybe we can be condescending. um, all of
All
that
those good
stuff.
things.
I know.
Yeah.
And so I think when our kid is shut down, again, they might just be overwhelmed and then not feel safe enough to be open for whatever reason, which can be partially, part them, but part us. That's the part we got to sort of be willing to be humble and look at, like, is there some reason why, or what would it take for me to help my kid feel safer, to be open? But maybe they don't know how, right? They don't know how to express feelings. They don't know how to put whatever is going on for them. Um, they might feel, maybe there is a sense of like, hopelessness. What's the point that I share? I mean, they might be overwhelmed that much with feelings, or being struggling with something, like anxiety or depression, or something that is sort of like keeping them from, being able to verbalize what's going on. 'Cause they're like, I don't even have words for it. I don't even know that there's a point in me telling anybody. I don't know that anybody's going to understand. It's really confusing to me. So all of that could be going on for a kid. So I think what's important is that we don't, because we can personalize. And while it's important to like reflect, like I said, to reflect on like, okay, is any of this me? We don't want to assume, right? Like this is where some of that open, asking open-ended questions with our kids and just like, hey, I'm just curious, like what, I'd love to know. I get a sense that something's going on for you. And I'd love to know more about that so that I can be supportive. How can I be helpful to you, or what do you need from me to feel comfortable being more open, or what, so that takes a lot of humility for a parent to say like, what do you need from me, or what am I, if there's anything that I'm doing, like I want to know that's kind of leaving you resistant to talk to me, that you fear about my response. Like I want to be here for you. So I need to know what that is. So we can humble ourselves up that way, right? But we also don't want to assume it's about us and personalize it and then respond to that, right? Because then we can like that can get in our way too of us really thinking about like what is our kid needs. It might really just be about them and their overwhelm and them not feeling skilled. And
Mhm.
then our job is to like trying to reach in and not make them feel bad for not being able to verbalize or not being open. That's the tough part. We can make it worse when we shame them or guilt them or accuse them or, you know, like, I'm just your mom. I do everything for you. Like, don't you see I love you more than anybody? Like, how can you not be open with me? And it's like that's not and the kid's like, yeah, my mom's so extra. Like, I definitely you talk to
The
kids all
word
day.
choice here. It's like, yeah,
It's
sounds
just
like a
what I
teacher.
hear. I can't be open with my mom. She's so extra. She will just totally overreact. She will be like all up in my grill 24/7. She will be like, like so we can't assume, but we have to approach with like calm care and curiosity and humility.
Love that. And I think like honestly, curiosity has been one of those things that we've heard on multiple different episodes in multiple different
Yeah.
contexts. And
Yeah.
so I would love to just like give that a little extra star point of like, we don't know. Like
Yeah.
we're figuring it out alongside them. Every one of our children is different and every life stage is different for them. Like my
Mhm.
goodness, they're so different at 12 than they were at 2. Like,
Right.
like
Even at 11, like they
right.
they
11 and
that's
12.
huge change. Yeah.
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 So curiosity, I think, is great. And I love that you bring in humility to that as well, because that really validates our role, right? Of, hey, I'm a human. I'm connecting with you because I care and I realize that I'm not perfect. And kind of coming at it from that position. So definitely some good points there too. If you were to give parents like a starting point today, so like one small shift that they can make this week with their teens, what would that be?
Back to the open-ended questions and then the listening. I think really, and that open-ended questions are the ones that start with what, when, how, versus, did you have a good time at the party? Did you have a good day at school? Are your friends vaping? Because they're just going to say like, yeah, no, or meh. That's a word, by the way, MEH, period.
There we go.
Meh. I don't know. So we say like, all right, what were the highlights of your day? What was cool about the party? What was cringy about it? What's going on? What are you hearing is happening? Or how are your friends handling, the pressures to do this? How do your friends take care of each other if they're worried about each other? But how and what questions are really going to be rich? And then you listen. So that's the one. And then listen. So I say if you're talking more than 50% of the time, it's not a conversation. You're probably lecturing or grandstanding or trying to prove you're right and they're wrong or trying to, like, impart, tell your stories, be funny, um, pontificate. So look for and I say 80/20. I think that that's just a safe equation so that's your assignment is to talk, and you're the 20. So you talk 20% of
Oh,
the
that's
time with
clarification. I was
open-ended
like, I thought you
questions.
just said I could talk for 80, right? No. The other way, the other way.
Yeah, and then and again, because we're it's really important that you know what's going on in their inner and outer world, and the only way to do that is if you really invite them into those conversations, and then and then let them share. So,
Curiosity there again, like follow-up
mhm.
questions, open-ended. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
Well, you had mentioned too, so like most parents that you work with or many families that you've worked with have reached out when they're in crisis. So like things are discovered late, there's spiraling behavior, maybe predators online, escalating things around technology or screens. Why do you think that prevention is so hard for families to prioritize?
yeah. Because I think we're all overwhelmed with so much that's just of what's in front of us. We're just facing the things and going through like, oh, I got to pay those bills. I got to manage this. We got to. I mean, I'm saying this to you, right? With 7 kids and plus on the way, right? So, but we're so busy facing what's in front of us that we're not thinking about all the things that are not even in our peripheral vision. So I think it's really, it's not ignorance. It's just that we don't think that it can be our kid until it's our kid, for one, or until it touches somebody that's close to us, and then it brings it closer into our periphery of view. But otherwise, we're just trying to keep on keeping on,
Makes a lot of sense.
with the things that are in front of us.
Yeah, yeah. Like your priorities through the day is like, what is my most urgent need? And sometimes, like, you don't really have a crisis or an emergency every day, so you're
Yeah,
kind of in that mode. Um,
yeah,
so when a parent does find something scary or that's alarming to them, so whether that be, vaping or drugs, explicit content, whatever that could be, what do you recommend that they do first or within like those first 24 hours of finding that? And I guess on the flip side, like also what you avoid doing in that time.
yeah, yeah. Because that I will say, first, I just want to say that moment is a really super ripe opportunity that can actually be a really beautiful moment. I know that's a weird word to use, perhaps, but I see a lot of parents dismiss some of that stuff like, oh, well, he'll just figure it out, or this is just a rite of passage, or everybody kind of goes there. And and what you've just done is number one, when we step in, it expresses that we care. Right. So there's a way that expresses that we either condone it or we don't care enough when we don't step in. But it's also like this right moment where I see this be like, okay, this could spiral into some like bigger stuff, or be this moment when we all like learn and grow and become stronger and wiser as a family and individual. So I just want to say that stepping in is really important, even with the little stuff like, oh, we had porn in my home was the first thing we had to deal with. And it was like, okay, just that he's looking stuff up, that he's looking up certain things, like, okay, we're going to come in and like, let's let's try to get ahead of it before even all the content, before he's seeking like the content. He's just even looking it up in 5th or 6th grade, right? So, the first thing we want to do is we have to sift out all of the feelings that are about us. So, that means the like, oh my gosh, he's been lying to me, feeling betrayed, and the indignance and the embarrassment. What are my friends in the book club gonna think? Like what am I like, right? What are the guilt of like, oh, what have I done wrong? So all the and anger, we tend to get angry sometimes when there's all these other feelings that are really more tender, right? They're about fear, and they're about, so we root down to there's the fear, and then underneath that, we got to really burrow down to like, oh, it's love. It's just pure, like, I would send or take a bullet for this kid. They're the love of my life without thinking about it. Right. So that's what this is about. So we have to be like, why does this matter to me? Why do I care? What do I want here? Before we even engage in any interaction about it. So, all right, I want my kid to be healthy and safe and responsible. And it's all about love. Okay. So we might have to keep breathing down into that, by the way, while we're having conversations, but
It
we do that
comes
first.
like it's so nicely from your mouth, and I'm like, I can only envision what this would like actually feel like. And
It's
that would
so
be,
hard.
yeah.
It's so hard, right? Because the freakouts, but they all just come from love. So we got to take the breaths, do whatever we need to. Ideally, we're because we're coming from calm and care. We want to come from calm, care, and the curiosity is going to come up again, and collaboration too. So who are the like with our partner, parent, grandparent, whatever, who are collaborators in raising this kid are like, let's like get on the same, so we're sort of a united front and we can approach and wrap around. So that's what we do first before we even say anything to this child. And then that first kind of confrontation still needs to come from love. And so we are not gonna, the timing matters. It really matters. If we have too many feels to be helpful, then we got to check ourselves. If our kid is under the influence of a substance or they are escalated or dysregulated, that's not the time either. So it's okay to say, you know what, because I love you so much, and you can't say this enough, because I love you so much, this really matters. And so we need to talk about this. But right now, like, I want to make sure I'm as helpful as possible. So I'm going to take a little bit of time, or I want to make sure that we can hear each other on this. So we're gonna take a little bit of time, and sometimes we can put that out there with some choice for our kid, with like a, okay, do you want to talk about this later tonight or tomorrow morning? Like, we can kind of, like, it's not negotiable. We're gonna talk about it, but you can give them just a little bit of agency in like when, so that they can gather themselves however they need to, or um so yeah, so that's the first. You asked what the first step is. That's the
It's a
first
big
step.
step.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. My gosh. Okay. Well, you kind of illustrated it perfectly, and that was going to kind of go into my next question, which was more around like helping parents move from panic to a plan. So now
yeah.
that we talked about like the first step, which is like setting that time, rooting in love and your
Mhm.
care and connection and curiosity, and the co people in your life.
Yeah,
Uh, what comes next? Like any like tips, framing that we could
yeah.
that conversation.
I think first you gotta sort of have some hope.
Mhm.
You have to believe that you can make a difference and be impactful and get your kid to a better place, or, that healthy, safe, responsible place. So have a vision of what is it that I want here? What do I want to guide myself towards? Um, Resources, so tapping into what are both sort of the resources that we have already that we can just like use, whether it is like, oh, I've got that neighbor that is a recovering addict that my son loves, and maybe they could just have like some coffee and talk about, the fact that he's been vaping weed more and more, right? Like, but think who, or maybe it's your pastor, or maybe it's, like, what are those resources that you have, and then what are the ones that you need, right? But so when you can start to sort of move into, okay, there's realistic, like, there's actions, there's things that are possible, and things that we can do, even if it is the empowering, I mean, I empower parents with those tips that we just talked about, with like, here's the actual, the skills, the things that you can grab, that are, here's some scripts, here's the, because we don't get that manual. I mean, that's why people write books, and I'm writing one now on teen whispering and how to use it for life's cringy conversations with our
There you
kids.
go.
Like,
Link in the
it's in
show notes.
process. Yeah. So, yeah, is that we kind of need the manual on this. So the parents just have to believe that there's hope, that there's a way there, um, that there are resources and places of wisdom to get, to get this stuff from.
Yeah. I want to come back to one of the things that you'd mentioned earlier in the podcast, which was more about like the world that they're living in right now is so different than the
Yeah.
world we grew up in. And there's a lot of different things pulling on them. And you had mentioned like it feels like parents might be swimming upstream as well.
Yeah.
And there's always something new every week, something's trendy. Oh my gosh, I feel I have to fit in. Um, what is within like a parent's control within this, like, even though like we're in a very scary landscape. And I guess when we get to that point where we've maybe noticed or we're starting to pick up on something that might be a little off with our kids, like addiction proofing, maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And, like, what does that look like in daily life? Like, especially if we
Mhm.
already know that there might be a pattern or a history or anything like that.
Yeah.
How do we actually then execute?
Yeah. So so there's a few, parts to that, and I'm gonna break it into 5. I'll just list them 5 parts because 'cause I've got this sort of
Okay.
model in my head about
Yeah.
that's for addiction proofing our kids.
Right.
And that, by the way, is the second book I'm writing, which is called Addiction Proofing Our Kids in an Addictive World. So,
Check the
stay
show notes.
tuned.
Like,
So, um, so one is that we want our kids to have the facts about what's out there. We want to be able to we want to be using everyday opportunities. So versus being like, we're going to have the porn talk, we're going to have the
ah,
bet, the gambling talk, we're going to have it's everywhere, y'all. There from the billboards to the music that comes on to the Super Bowl to the do you know what I mean? So using those organic everyday opportunities, the 5 minutes when you're not looking at each other moments, when you're walking the dog or baking or fixing the car or shooting baskets, right? All those to talk about the facts. Around and some of our schools are doing that, right? Some of them are weaving in things about digital literacy and screens and mental health and substance use and some sexual health stuff that's progressive enough. And some of them aren't, right? And it's still, we want it to be ours as parents to be. So, so they need to know just the facts of how this is the way that these things can impact you with a developing brain and in the ways that matter to them. That's hugely key. Is that a lot of us got some like scare tactic drug ed or the whatever the tar covered lung in a jar or
just never
like
do it. That's the
the
message
over the top, the
here.
just say no, all of that,
Yeah.
it's not realistic, but it didn't speak to my values. I was like, I'm never gonna be that, and, I'm just doing this for now. So we need to be talking about these things and having them look at how could this stuff, once they get the facts about what things really can do to them and can impact them, and they've thought through, um, again, like, gone through the filter of their values with those things, and that's kind of the part 2 of the 5, is that the more that our kids that we help them get clear on their values and their goals, so who they believe in being and what they want for themselves, then help them keep that on the front part of their brain, the more likely they are to sift every decision they make through that filter, whether it's who they befriend and what classes they take to whether they start having sex or whether they do watch the porn or whether they do the drug. Is this going to fit with who I want to be? Is it with the facts that I got from part 1, right? What I know about it, does this like fit in with who I want, or is it, you know, contrast? Does it conflict with what I want for myself? And then they need to have, if we're going to say, hey, so these things are bad, or they're risky and dangerous and not good for you, or at least don't do them now with your growing brain, then they need to have like realistic strategies for steering through the pressures to do them.
Mm.
They need to be able to disassemble those messages and see behind the media and the influencers and the advertising, to like the agenda, the agendas and the devious strategies and the ways that they're marketing to them. So they have lifetime consumers of, social media, vapes, you know, sugary foods, like all of that. So help them disempower the media influences to talk about peer pressure, what that actually is. And remember, we're not going to assume what that is. We're going to ask them, what does this actually look like and feel like for you? Your friendship group this year compared to last year. Like, what does that actually look like for you? And then they need to know like real world skills. What does that actually look like when I'm around somebody that I like and want to be liked by and I want to belong and they're doing this thing, because they will say peer pressure is usually up here. It's messages and stories they're telling themselves. So we want to help them kind of like argue, challenge some of that thinking. Again, with permission and all that, you're right. We're using our teen whispering skills, but so that they can actually go into the party or the social event or the interaction with some things ready to go, where they've thought through. And don't make them role play, y'all, unless they want to. Please don't
That
force
was
that on
gonna
your
be my
kids.
question because I'm like, oh yeah, I would totally do this with my 5-year-old. Wait, different context.
Yeah. Like 6th grade is kind of the line that I see them not. But but they might want to come up with like, well, what can I say if I'm offered this? Or what's the actual thing I say if somebody if somebody wants my ride that was going to drive me home is drunk, or but like so actual they do want those, and all the research actually shows that the more a kid has thought that stuff through and talked it out, the more likely they are to implement those strategies. So we want to that's part of it. And then kind of the fourth part is that we have to help them have alternatives to what all of those things provide that they can access and that work for them. So what that looks like is, and I have this 6 needs that our kids have. They need fun, thrill, excitement. They need dopamine popping. By adolescence, they have a dip in it and they're craving novel, thrilling, kind of like healthy, scary experiences, like, oh my God,
Happy
I got
scary.
to get on stage and do that. I slayed it. They need that. They need that. Right. So they need the fun and the excitement. They want to belong like no other time in their lives. That's 2. They have felt controlled every moment of their lives and they want to feel some sense of choice and control and feel kind of grown up. They're looking for a sense of purpose and identity. That's 4, right? Figuring out who they are and that they've got some value. And then they're trying to, confidence and competence is 5. They're trying to figure out, like, they want to like that person and feel like they're good at something. And then 6 is they don't want to be distressed. They need coping and security emotionally, right? So the elevator speech version, when people are like, how do I keep my kids from being addicted? Are you've got to honestly look at your kid in those 6 areas. What does my kid have? And what do they need? Where are the gaps? Where are the holes? Like I talked about that in the beginning. Like I had holes in enough of those areas and nothing good enough to meet those needs, that when food came along and boys came along and alcohol came along and it worked better than anything else to meet those needs for me, I attached to it. So what we can do as parents preventatively is to look at, what does my kid need and what can I do what do I steer them towards, engage them in, provide, right? Where these will be met for them. And we, by the way, we get to use the same thing when we bust our kid going there. When we catch our kid doing something, we can bring out those same 6 needs and say, what needs is my kid's behavior meeting? Whether it's the porn or the gambling or the gaming, what needs are they meeting? And then so then the strategy is, the consequences are, what do I need to put in place? What do we need to intervene with so that our kid has what they need, right? So that's kind of the 4. And then the 5 is that we want to, back to our collaboration. This is where we want to be collaborating as much as we can with them and with anybody helping raise our kid, so that there is like wraparound support, all aimed at delaying this kid going there or going there again, as long as possible. And that part's a little tough because that involves our modeling. I'm looking you in the eyeballs, parents. That means our modeling on on coffee and wine and, right? Like what are we telling our kids about, what will bring us happiness and belonging? And so our modeling is crucial. That means our supervision and our monitoring and our expectations, and that we set, and it's really important that we communicate those really clearly so our kid knows what's expected of them, and that we're here to help them be safe and healthy and responsible, and that we're going to step in if they're having trouble with that. They know to expect all that. So that is all kind of in that last clump of that, collaborative wraparound support to delay, to delay use. And then wrapped around all that, if you could picture this visually, is our relationship to them. Because we can do all of the things perfectly, and if they don't trust us to be reliable sources of guidance and support and information, then it's all going to fall short. So they have to trust us to have all those things be impactful.
My gosh, I feel
There's
like we need to I want to rewind, listen again, take notes, rewind, listen again. Okay.
addiction proofing 101.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Good.
But it does make a lot of sense, right? And that's what we know as society. But then when you think about it in that kind of phased system, or the 6 needs that they have, right? Oh yeah, this actually does make a lot of sense for where people might pull in additional like supports to fill the need, whether that's a good thing or a not so
Yeah.
great. And oh my gosh, you just put it so beautifully. So I'm gonna leave
Good.
my voice out of all of this now. I
No.
I truly just want to thank you so much for being vulnerable and, sharing your story with us and rooting us in this experience. And for being the kind of voice that parents need right now, which is really like honest and grounded and practical, I think are some big
Thank
words
you.
that come out. And what I appreciate most is that you don't just tell parents to do better or hold the line. You really help us understand what's actually happening beneath the behavior, and you remind us that connection is not just a soft strategy, but it's actually a protective one. That's the love part. Um, so, to our listeners, if today's episode hit home for you, be sure to check the show notes for ways to connect with Kriya and explore all of her resources. I promise you, you'll need to check them out.
And
Um,
more coming. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and including screen conscious parenting support as well, which we didn't quite get to all the way today.
Next
Um,
time. We'll go there
Next
next
time.
time.
That's right. We'll have to do another episode. And then the tools that she shares with families who are trying to prevent things from spiraling. So, if you're in that season where you feel like you're already behind, I want you to hear this clearly that you're not too late. You don't need a
Mm-mm.
perfect plan. You need the next step and then the support. So make sure to subscribe to the Launch Family podcast. And if you found this episode helpful, leave a review. It helps more parents find these conversations when they need it. And until next time, remember that you know your child best and you don't have to navigate this alone.
No.